What I'd like to do now is kind of open it up for the panel for some questions. And I guess the main question I have is, well, who's on the other side? Who opposes safety in the workplace? How strong are they, and how do we fight them? And where is, I know there's the law, the scaffolding law, and there's a organization, Unshackle New York. I think they want to call it Unscaffold New York. And I know that they're in opposition and they want to change the scaffolding law. So what are the other types of groups like that? I mean, Assemblyman, why don't you start? And you have your own one of these.
I have my own toy, yes, thank you. I've been very good this morning. I only checked, my email a couple of times.
I got an email from Joel already.
While I was talking.
Yeah.
When is Lansman gonna stop?
Who is this guy?
Well, I tell you, up in Albany, the anti-safety advocates are very active and very well funded and are a constant obstacle. You mentioned Unshackle. I think it's Unshackle upstate. Maybe it's Unshackle upstate. Maybe they've gone statewide. They've moved out of upstate. But broadly speaking, the business community is very, very strongly opposed to workplace safety regulations, laws, initiatives. Now, it's not as simple as that. There are many good employers. There are employers who employ union workers that are very diligent about workplace safety and are very active in making sure that they have both a safe workplace, but also being receptive to new ideas about workplace safety. But there is a dominant perception in the business community that making a workplace safe is expensive and is going to put the employer at a competitive disadvantage in absolute terms, but also vis-a-vis the employers, the bad actors who are not union, forget non-union, who are not going to be following the law in any event. But on every piece of legislation, whether it's related to, I see John left, but whether it's related to the MTA, we have bills related to workplace safety in the MTA. We'll get a call from the MTA's lobbyist, a nice guy. I work with him on lots of issues, giving me chapter and verse on why this is going to destroy the MTA. So the business community is very, very well organized on these issues, but it's a little more complicated than that. I want to give everyone a chance to opine on this if they want. But even good employers and even my friends in the labor movement and the unions, have to make a judgment about balancing the costs that a workplace safety initiative will impose on the ability of the employer to do the work and to make sure that, and here I'm speaking specifically of the construction industry, make sure that a job's not going to get shut down because of a safety violation that does not rise to the level of it ought to shut a job down. And so that's a balance that has to be struck even with the best of employers.
Thank you, Assemblyman. We have some other labor people here in the audience. Tony Potenza from the New York Labor Healthcare Alliance, and Alan Lubin and Mike McGuire from the laborers, and Bill Hopefield from Local 46. Bill, I know you have a lot of work that you're doing with non-union work sites. How do non-union work sites not protect workers? I mean, what do you see happening?
Thanks for asking. Bill Holfeld, Local 46 Labor Management. First of all, just real briefly, I want to thank everybody on the panel, A, for all the terrific work they do. I'm familiar with all the work that all of them do, and B, for their eloquent presentation today, because it is long overdue that the conversation got moved out of just dollars and cents and into workplace safety and dignity, which is what's really important, because we are people. Whether we're union or non-union or labor or management, we're people, and that's supposed to be the bottom line. But going back to your question, one of the things, for instance, I want to go to the point of training that John spoke about as well. We spend a tremendous, when I say we, I mean the local unions in this city, spend a tremendous amount of money and put an awful lot of effort into training our people so that they're very safe. I myself am an OSHA certified instructor. I'm a graduate of the OSHA 500 class. every one of our class, in our apprenticeship class, we have a pre-apprenticeship program where before you're even allowed to put 1 foot on the job, you get your basic OSHA 10. Okay, after you're in your apprenticeship, you go through OSHA 30. We give scaffolding training. We give track safety training for our workers in case they're on an MTA job. All of this comes out of the general funds from the union, and that's because we are dedicated and we are committed to putting to protecting our people, and B, to putting the best trained people out in our contractors milieu, because they need to make money, and we understand their need for profit, and we also understand that we can balance a worker's safety with an employer's need for profit. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. They can coincide, and we do everything we can to make sure it happens. And and just a question about public relations. If you want to really understand what it's about, John also said about going to a funeral. Last week there was the Workers' Memorial Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral. All right? Be there next April 28th and see how many people are in those pews, and listen to every one of those bells that are rung in remembrance of a dead construction worker. In this past year we had 12. 12 people died on the job, and we don't differentiate between union and non-union. We ring the bell and we honor them as well. A life is a life. And in my own, again, as John referred to, he worked on Building 7. The last project I was on, when I still worked on the tools, was the AOL Time Warner building. I was on that job every day for 18 months. In the 18 months that I was there, I saw 3 people die. Now, I would ask everybody in this room to ask themselves, okay, in any of your jobs, how many of you saw 3 people, co-workers, die in 18 months? And the depression, even if you're not the one who's harmed, the depression that you go through coming home knowing people die on this job. People I had coffee with yesterday are now dead. That's why this is an important issue, and I thank you for asking, Will.
Thank you, Bill. Now, we have some other people in the audience. Mary Lewis is with the New York State Nurses Association. They have different types of hazards, such as needle sticks and whatever else goes on in a hospital. Mary Lewis, why don't you talk about for a second, what are some of the issues that nurses confront?
Good morning, everyone. Lou, thank you for inviting me to the panel. Thank you for the wonderful information. For our nurses, we know we're protected under OSHA. We know there's laws protecting us under the National Labor Relations Board, that we can advocate for safe working environment, and we do. We train our nurses to report violations. We do regulatory reporting. We have walkthroughs within our work sites. We also provide training for our nurses, and we work with OSHA and other groups to come in and provide training for our nurses. The biggest issue is for increasing awareness, okay, reporting, and as well as filing grievances. We're a union, so file the grievance, so that we can go through the grievance process, as well as working with our labor management committees. And I think the continuous advocacy, continuous reporting, and continuous educating our members makes us stronger in that avenue.
What are the hazards that your nurses face? that your
Well,
members face?
a big hazard right now is patient to staff ratio. Okay, that's a real serious thing. I just did a workshop with nurses last week, and they were telling me about, they were on a unit, and there were 2 nurses and 19 patients, and 5 acute patients, okay, of which a nurse, one of the 2 went to take the break. The first one who was left went to the bathroom because she couldn't hold it anymore. And when she went to the bathroom, one of the patients went into respiratory arrest, okay, and as she was coming out, she went to secure help for the patient. They sustained the patient later died, and then they blamed her for it, okay? Staffing is an issue. Needle sticks is the issue. Environmental chemical exposures are issues. I mean, there's a long list. Nurses, doctors, and everyone, as well as the families who visit, are exposed to chemicals that we're not even aware of. We have trained our workers to put on protective equipment where they are in certain areas. Changing the culture in the hospital so that there's a just and safe environment is important. So it's a continuous problem. We are having a rally on May the 11th in support of advocacy for nurses, in support of quality care, in support of staffing, safe staffing ratios. We ask you to come out and join us. So thank you.
Thank you, Mary Lewis. And just like all of us are in John Samuelson's hands, ultimately all of us are in your hands too.
Yes.
So we thank you for your dedication
Thank you.
to our health and well-being. Now, Alan Lubin was Executive Vice President of NYSUT, the New York State United Teachers. Alan, why don't you give us a couple of seconds or a minute or so on why, what are the challenges of safety in the workplace for teachers?
Well, I really don't want to go through all of them. It's our members get assaulted as well, and the dangers, the environmental dangers when a construction job comes in and it's not handled correctly because there's no union person to speak with. In many cases, we have equipment that's left in the hallways and things that are just broken down and improper use. I remember sitting with our president, Dennis Hughes, of the AFL-CIO, watching a video about how much cheaper you can build a building or a school without union labor. And we were watching these two guys, and we knew which was a union operation. They showed the two work sites. The one in the union operation, everybody's wearing a hat. In the other operation, they weren't even wearing shirts. They were working outside. And it's like, there are no rules, and therefore there are no expenses for the employer. So we see that, and we saw it in the schools, and we are constantly challenged by it. I'd rather than list all the environmental hazards, because the chemicals and all the equipment, I can go through that for quite a bit. I want to talk about a place where we're failing. We're all failing in the public relations piece, which we failed historically. And I just retired after 42 years as a union representative. And we don't get our word out. The other side does much better than we do in getting to the general public. If you listen to the issues that are out there now, when you know when New York City is negotiating with the police because you see the articles about the cops sleeping on the job. You know when they're negotiating with the TWU because you see all these criminal TWU people, stealing and robbing the poor citizens of New York blind. You don't see the story about somebody gets hurt or somebody who's a hero or any of that. We'll never see that. So we don't own the press. We own the streets, and we don't use it enough. We don't use it enough. There are a bunch of rallies coming up now. We should all try to get to as many as we can. The Workers' Memorial Day, there was one here in the city. We're talking about 12 people from one union. In the Albany district, a very small area, I went to the Workers' Memorial. There were 12 people who died in Albany last year. I don't like that the numbers are the same. But there are 12 people that died in a very small area compared to New York City. So we have to be out there on the streets in political action. And that's where our strength will be. And I want to single out Rory Landsman. Rory became an assemblyman as I was stepping down. We worked together for a couple of years. But you have a couple of heroes in the legislature. We need that legislature. Rory is at every event. And you see a guy like this, and my hero upstate, I have two, Bob Riley and Neil Breslin, they're the ones who are at every event. When Carl McCall was an elected official, every event. We don't see our legislators, and we let them get away with it. And we shouldn't let them get away with it. If we invite somebody to an event, we should call them and ask them why they weren't there. We should, we can accept a representative because we know they can't be everywhere. But this gentleman, we see everywhere. Everywhere. And that's what it should be. So my message is we have to learn to work and play better together. We have public sector, private sector, we work together on such great programs, and then we fall apart over nonsense that somebody else creates for us. When it was the automobile industry, the unions that caused the collapse of all these car manufacturers, that's what you read about in the papers, that the unions who had been giving back for 6 or 7 years, our construction workers, when 100% of the buildings in New York used to be built union, we're about 70% now? About 70% now?
About 50, I think.
Horrendous.
Yep.
And
Probably close
when
to
there's a union training session, and you heard about 2 or 3 of them today, I've always said we shouldn't have to do that. Management should train our people how to do the jobs. Every one of us does that. Every single union in this room does that. And why do we do it? Because we got to protect our members. We got to make sure they go home at the end of the day, after working in a safe environment. So I applaud you. I thank you all for your presentations today, for coming. I thank everybody for coming. Let's start thinking how we can help somebody else with their problem. Let's start looking more at coalitions, more at working together, so that when there's a construction issue, workers across the state understand what that issue is. When there's a school issue, workers across the state understand what that issue is, because our friends are only the people who are working. Elected officials have got to be brought to the table, and they have to feel the pain. That's called the primary. You have to feel the pain, because you don't want to if you don't want to upset a party, you can do a primary. Legislators have to feel the pain when they're ignoring us, and that's an individual legislator. I don't like to go after any large group. I don't see, well, it's the Republicans are all criminals, the Democrats are all criminals. It's the individual legislators who cast those wrong votes, and we have to keep reminding them that. So, one thing we should be talking about is how we can get together better, and a little advertisement for Balcony. That's not only labor, that's labor and business. There are a lot of good businessmen in this state, and a lot of people who are working with us in the labor movement on job protection, on health and safety issues, on health care. So it's a coalition. We need more coalitions, and we need to talk to each other a little bit more.
Thank you, Alan. Rosen from CSEA. How does safety in the workplace impact your members? I know you're all over the state, and you're in counties, and you're the major union of state workers. Give us a 30-second.
Okay, biggest
Or 60.
problem, thank you very much. My name is Mitch Rosen. I work for tax and finance for the state of New York. I'm the guy that goes and levies your account and closes out your business and whatever.
Let's talk to someone else for a second.
But we just completed a study on workplace violence. And believe it or not, the biggest issue wasn't threats against the worker, wasn't threats, what we used to call domestic violence things, where a wife wants to, or a husband wants to come in and pay their debt, and the spouse doesn't want them. They follow them into the place, and there's a big fight. That's not really the biggest problem we have. What we have is, if we attach somebody's account, or we warrant them, which is a public, it's not like an arrest warrant. It's just a public notice that there's a debt. These people call up and they say, right now I can't handle this. I'm going to kill myself. So the thing is, it's violence against themselves. And that's a big, big problem right now. And we had to develop a plan on how do we deal with this. We can't say, well, tough. That's not the way to do it. You have to deal with you have a problem you have to deal with. And it's like everything else that we do. We've been for years trying to work out a system where we can have a decent air quality in the workplace, something we don't have. OSHA doesn't have a standard for that. For years we've been trying to work out where the elevators work in the building. Most state buildings, especially if they're under OGS, aren't up to spec. So they're exempt from this. And these things cause stress, they cause whatever. So what we've been trying to do lately is we have these seminars periodically where we talk to the people, we create focus groups to say, well, what is your problem? What's going on here that's not good? And maybe we can work on that and fix it. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But if we can make the job a little better, a little safer for people, as you know, I hate to repeat what everybody said before. If we can make it a little safer, a little better for you, you enjoy your job a little better. If you got to come to a place where you don't want to be, you're not going to enjoy what you do, no matter how much you're into what you do. I'm very much into what I do, but seriously, you have to create a safe environment for your workers. If you don't, you're going to have a very, very unhappy employee base, and that's not good for anybody.
Thank you. Mike McGuire, you were one of the co-sponsors of today's event. Why did you co-sponsor it? What do you want to get out of this?
Well, it's obviously, I mean, it's a big issue, and John, as one of the heads of my board, touched on the construction issues. But I would take this time. It raised a couple of questions in my mind. Something for Rory, he doesn't work hard enough, so task him with another thing. With what John said about, when a worker gets hurt, a broken arm, broken leg, they put him in a car, drive him home. I'd like to craft a piece of legislation that says if you knowingly conceal a workplace accident in such a manner, it's a felony. You know, I think that'd be right up Rory's alley, so.
Allison is working on it as you speak.
I'm sure she is, she's fantastic. The other question I got for Rory too is when you first spoke about the plethora of enforcement agencies we have. I mean, I guess the question is that good that there's so many of them, or is it bad? Is there a passing of the buck? Is there, you know, or do, like, you know, I mean,
That, very briefly, I remember being at a hearing, I think when we had that spate of crane accidents, and I remember being at a hearing, and the buildings department was testifying, and I remember asking then, I think it was then the deputy commissioner, Lemandry, who's now the commissioner, and I asked a very simple question, which was, when your inspectors are on a site as for the buildings department and investigating a potential violation of the buildings code, and if you see something, do you communicate that to OSHA? Because the buildings department is not a workplace safety department fundamentally. That's OSHA's job. And I did not get a satisfactory answer. We put in legislation, but in the end, we got a commitment, and standing here today, I don't know how well that commitment has been followed through, that there would be better coordination. Well, I know that there is better coordination between the Department of Buildings and OSHA. That I know for a fact. So when you have so many different participants that are necessary to make workplace safety work, there's certainly the potential for lack of coordination, lack of collaboration. I think that we're at a moment where there is good cooperation, where the buildings department, because of where it was, OSHA, because of David Michaels and the Obama administration's commitment to workplace safety, the State Department of Labor, which I don't have to tell you is night and day from where it was with Pataki to where it is now. And then we have terrific advocacy organizations and a vibrant labor movement. There is a sincere effort to collaborate and coordinate and to get good results. But sometimes things fall through the cracks.
well, maybe we should call
Thank you.
on the powers that be to create some sort of an overall task force, which is what we did with the Department of Labor when Spencer became governor on, you know, misclassification, on non-payment of wages, all that stuff.
And you had in the city, you had the scaffolding task force. I mean, it
But,
took
I mean,
getting.
It sounds like part of the problem is we're talking DOB, which is city, OSHA, which is federal, and DOL, which is state, and, you know, never the three shall meet.
Yeah.
So
So
what's that?
we're basically going into our closing comments, so
Just,
that's why we need you for a minute.
just a minute.
Oh, you go.
OSHA has begun, based upon a program here in New York City coming out of the Scaffold Task Force, an effort to enlist localities to cooperate with reporting unsafe conditions. So you have fire inspectors who go in, you have restaurant inspectors who go into places of employment, you have building inspectors. And OSHA is attempting to develop a program to work with all of them so that unsafe conditions are reported to OSHA. It is a complicated issue because you're charging city employees, unionized employees, with new tasks. And so there are collective bargaining issues that are involved in it. It's not just it's just not an easy fix. But OSHA, given the limited number of OSHA inspectors, the current administration is trying to figure out how to increase the eyes and ears in the workplace.
Thank you. Continuing on our 2-minute drill here, John Delgado, you want to sum up your statement today?
I'll make it 30 seconds, very briefly. Mike is right, and everybody else is right just about. We need to start working together, seeing what we have in common, seeing what our objective should be, which is the human life. Let's value human life. Let's see what we could do to make sure that the human life is protected, and hold accountable those people that are responsible to that. And I have some great ideas, and maybe someday we'll sit down with OSHA and you know what, there's so much money out there that could be used if we learn to harvest. Maybe we should create a panel where all the unions donate a penny an hour to a safety net that comes from New York City, and have 200 people monitoring the city. There's ways of doing things. A penny an hour, it's not a lot for a union, but it's a lot when we all work together being put somewhere else. There's so many great ideas that we can come up with to resolve problems because of budget cuts, to resolve problems because of lack of workforce, to resolve problems because, you know what? Those are serious problems. And we know the money. If the money's not there, you can only do so much. But yet there are ways, if we can collectively put our minds together, to find a solution to every problem. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Just a note, our programs here were printed by Content Critical. Our friend in the back, Al Handel, is with that company. He's been around longer than I have. And if you need union printing, he does a good job. These are nice programs. You can look at the back of our program for our sponsors. If I read all our sponsors, I would take up the rest of the time. Matthew Funk, why don't you give your closing comments? Then we'll go to John Samuelson, and we'll finish our 2-minute drill with Bruce Ventimiglia, our balcony co-chair.
The main thing that I think we have to get out of this is that people have to be educated about what's going on in the system, what's going on with workers, how the workers can be taught about the workers' compensation law and safety issues. One thing was mentioned about employers shuttling off an injured worker in a car, sending them home. That worker also may not file for workers' compensation benefits because they don't know it exists. They're put in a car, told to go to a doctor. That's all they know. That worker now loses out on benefits, loses out on medical, and probably is not going to be getting paid anything while they're out of work. So the most important thing is we have to make sure that everyone is educated and all work together. Thank you.
I guess, John and John, when a worker gets injured, do they have a phone number that they can call?
Yes.
Do they have on their union card?
Or union guys have
They
it.
say, call this number and we'll make sure that you're taken care of and you're protected. John Samuelson, and then Bruce and Neil may want to say hello or goodbye.
I guess, in summary, a few things that I want to say. One of them is that there's certainly legislative solutions to the safety problems that workers face. There are other solutions, and they all have to work in conjunction with each other. But I do want to reiterate that absent legislative solutions and any other solutions, the primary vehicle to protect workers in the workplace is to show union density. In the presence of an organized union in the workplace, safety is going to be increased. Management is not going to drop the hammer on workers when there's a strong union presence in the workplace. And that's what we're pushing for in Local 100. And specifically, as it relates to my union, to TW Local 100, particularly as of recent, in this time of fiscal constraint, I'm driving home the point to our members that we are going to work safe. And we're going to work safe. We're going to go home in one piece, regardless of whether that has an effect on on-time bus and train performance. We're not going to allow this recession to actually send our folks home in body bags. We're going to go home in one piece, and even if that means that the trains and buses don't run the way they should run. So thank you.
Thank you. I just want to recognize Tony Potenza from the New York Labor Healthcare Alliance. He represents more than 30 Taft-Hartley unions in upstate New York, and he came down here for this event. You want to say a couple of seconds, or you're good?
No, thank you very much, Lou, and I very much appreciate the invitation and very much appreciate the presentation by our panelists. You know, I know this is a little bit of a non sequitur, but one thing that John Delgado brought up that was stuck in my mind, how the union contract, and I'm commenting because when I used to be Tony Potenza, I was the business manager of Plumbers and Steam Fitters up in Albany before this job with the Healthcare Alliance.
Now you're Anthony Potenza.
No, man. But anyway, the uneven application of the law the way it used to be, especially under the previous administration up in Albany. And I remember one of our union projects, one of our people being cited by the state or by OSHA for a violation. Nothing major, but a violation nonetheless. That would have resulted in a fine. On another job, that exact same violation took place, non-union setting. I go yelling and screaming to OSHA about, you know, you really hammer this job, this union job, you don't do a damn thing about the exact same violation, not across the street, but across town. he said, the reason is because you guys ought to know better. Those non-union guys, they just don't, you know, they don't know better. You guys know better. You should, I wanted to, I'm telling you, I saw red. I saw red. But thankfully, and really under, you know, Colleen Gardner has done a great job as labor commissioner, and of course, going forward, things have been much better. But still in all, we got a long ways to go. But anyway, I know it's a little non sequitur to what was being commented upon in the 2-minute drill, but I had to mention that little anecdotal story there.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Bruce Ventimiglia is our balcony co-chair. He's a businessman. He runs Saratoga Capital Management and Asset Allocation Company, but he believes in business and labor working together, and he's going to give our closing comments. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Lou. Before I do, let me introduce Mike Madoris. Mike has a quick comment to make as well.
Yes, I'm the New York City chapter president of the American Society of Safety Engineers, a 100-year organization, came out of the ashes of the Triangle Short Range Factory fire. Thank you to the assembly member to have me here where you can be blamed, depending on what I have to say. From my experience out in construction sites, complacency is the #1 enemy that's out there. And as a trainer, as being at the heavy civil constructions, MTA projects, capital construction, and so forth, I just want to say we are out there. We have safety engineers on sites. And in my personal case, I'm known as the SOP, SOB. The most hated person out there is the safety guy. Also, when it's most important, I am the most important person out there. I want to see everyone go home like everyone else does, but I have some tools that I can use. And those tools are available to anyone who's interested. I'd like to make that offer available. I'll be over to the side there. We can bring you up to speed. If your lost time averages are high, $1 invested in safety gets $3 to $5 back in return. Thank you very much.
Folks, thank you very much for attending, and I want to thank our distinguished panel. Rory, thank you. Joel, John, Matt, John, wonderful comments and insights, and thank you for the awareness. And we look very forward as Balcony to surfacing up some very concrete solutions so we can go back to the Honorable Assemblyman and try to put some stuff in place to get the workforce even safer. You know, I was actually appalled in looking at some of the material to learn that when OSHA went into effect back in 1971 or so, that 38 workers a day died on the job. That's astounding, shocking. 38, imagine 38 workers a day going to work and not coming home. The statistics have gotten better in that regard, they say, but they're not good enough. The expectation that we have in this society and as Balcony, and as these panel members sit here before you today, is that it's a reasonable expectation for every worker to be able to go to work every day and return to their home and to their families. And until we get there, the workforce is not safe enough. So we applaud what you guys have done and what you're doing every day to try to make the workforce safer. On behalf of my co-chairman, Al Lubin, and Lou Gordon, our director at Balcony, I want to thank all of these folks and the folks at Millburg. The folks at Millburg have given us a wonderful environment to be in today, and we really appreciate it. They always come through for us, and they come through with beautiful scenery. So thank you, friends at Millburg.
Jersey's still there, folks.
Yolanda and Debbie work endlessly to make sure this event comes off very well for us here, and they did so today again. The folks who worked on the committee to organize this group, Neil's folks, Stephanie and Neil, and our folks at Balcony, Diane and Christina and Nick, thank you for putting this together for us. We appreciate it. Very quickly on Balcony, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Business and Labor Coalition, we started 5 years ago or so. Our first project was to try to get some help for the folks down there. That awful event that occurred on September 11, 2001, we worked hard to try to get public service announcements out to get benefits for the people who were involved in rescue, recovery, and cleanup Canal Street South. We put out those public service announcements with the wonderful Sigourney Weaver and the late great light heavyweight champion of the world, Jose Torres. They went over well, and I'm happy to say that governor after governor, since we pushed for that, signed legislation providing benefits to folks who inhale toxins going downtown. Those toxins, Joel, you know better than anybody, are still affecting many, many people. We don't even know the ultimate effect of what those are. We went on to work at Balcony on a workers' compensation bill. Artie Wilcox from the AFL-CIO was instrumental in reforming workers' compensation. What we're trying to get to here is we know there are many, many good employers in the state who pay their fair share, but we know that there are some employers who aren't stepping up and paying their fair share. And as a business community, what we'd like to see is the employers who are paying their fair share be joined by employers who aren't. They need to step up. That will help the employers, frankly, who are paying in more than they should be, because the folks who aren't paying anything. That will help them reduce what they're paying and make it fairer for them, and put a fair and reasonable burden on the employers who aren't paying to pay what they should be paying. So we advocate for that as well at Balcony. We've worked endlessly on healthcare reform. We are involved in the debate. We put on a major forum at the Hard Rock Cafe where we had Secretary Sebelius out right after the president was fortunate to get healthcare legislation passed. She came out and addressed us as a community. We have a lot of work to do there, as we know, and Balcony continues to work hard on those issues. We work hard on taxation in the state. We work hard on protecting the benefits that the hardworking men and women in the state and across the country have earned and deserve, and they shouldn't be taken away from them. So we welcome you as future members. If any of these causes or others on those kind of levels are things that you want advocacy for. The Business and Labor Coalition is a nonpartisan. It is a not-for-profit organization that welcomes Republicans, Democrats, independents, and people of all walks of life in. What we want are common sense views where we can bring the business and labor community together to find common ground and provide solutions. We want to go forward, not backward, and provide solutions, make the state and the country a better state and country. There's a member directory in the packet that you have. It's a very robust organization representing about 1,000 or so businesses and labor organizations across the state. We look forward to having you join us, giving us your ideas, and making the state a better and safer state. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.